Welcome to Thorin's YouTube channel. Andrew, shut the fuck up, you piece of shit. Welcome to Thorin's YouTube channel. It's going to be a wild ride. GG, motherfuckers.
This is episode 58 of Counterpoints. We're back for another one. I'll do what I never normally do, which is I normally start off with the banter, and the problem is I always think banter's good to break the ice, just have a bit of fun. But then I've noticed the problem is if you actually do break the ice and the conversation starts, oftentimes you do just forget to introduce any of the people on the show, and you just assume everyone knows as always halfway through the VOD. So we'll try and do some fin towards professionalism, Moses, and introduce who's on the show, and then proceed to bantering. But
it's a new spin. It's a new angle.
Even as I say that, I already know it's a lie. We're going to fall back into our old wave. As I'm introducing them, how will I be able to avoid the inevitable law of just immediately bantering as introducing them? So we've got you, Moses, a guy who...
You're right into it, not even trying, are you?
It's been a while since you've done many of those big finals. You couldn't get the big final at that huge Blast Pro Series tournament circuit. That went to one of the young guns, coming up, taking your spot. It's all right. Everyone had that eventually, Moses. Just your turn sooner than the rest.
I did Chicago final and Copenhagen final.
No final at the major.
No final at the major. I've had a couple already, though. I had a couple early on.
Sure.
But none of the good finals.
No, you don't get any of the good ones. Of course not. No, that goes without saying. I mean, that's the irony. Is either Bardolph and DDK just get the final, or they just get the best matches anyway. I think that's how the universe works for the past 2 years. If you've ever noticed, they've got an unreasonable amount of good games. But whatever, fair play to them, I say. No hard feelings or anything. Right? Anyway, let's keep going.
Rick, of course. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I love
obviously goes without saying.
Yeah. Well, you're about Dan's a good guy. Right. And on that note, keep moving on. So in the bottom right-hand corner, we've got Snappi, who is someone who's been discussed on this show many times, just usually not when he's here. So we'll see if it's different at all when he is here. And also, here's the thing. I'll just put this out there right now. Within reason, if there's people who feel like they've been unfairly criticised or, a classic thing, I'll give you an example, is I know people who actually are friends of mine who are pros who, it's not that they think you're being too harsh when you criticise them, it's just that they know that you can't always know stuff about what's going on in their team if you're not in their team, And the problem is, there's not that many chances for players to actually give their insight as to what they think's going on or their opinions on how things are going. So, within reason, most people who want to clap back, you can come on the show and clap back directly. You don't have to do it passive-aggressively through Twitter or be like, fucking, I hate that guy, just privately. No, that doesn't... First of all, that's not of entertainment to anyone. We all hate me privately. We can do that all day long. So no one's getting any enjoyment out of that either. You're not even winning off that. Also, not that many other good podcasts, to be honest. I know nowadays... HLTV.org's already, they thought they've cracked the formula. They're like, get a guy with ginger hair who no one knows and just start doing a show. It's it hasn't taken off yet. What else is he doing though? There must be something else. So they've started with the blueprint there, Moses, but there's a long way to go before they perfect that formula. That's just burning up a load of caramel. You're not going to have Coca-Cola immediately. You've got to put herbs and spices in there,
The ginger is just the foundation. You have to be able to build upon it, which is where people can really get lost.
Some would say I made it this far in spite of being ginger, not directly because of it. That wasn't the main factor that got me this far. You
soulless bastard.
But anyway, the last person in this call is AcilioN. Oh yeah, by the way, I didn't even mention who Snappi was there as I was referencing on. But anyway, he is obviously the in-game leader of OpTic Gaming, formerly Heroic, which is how we now segue into the next person. Because he was formerly of a million other teams and now of Heroic, so different career path there. It's AcilioN, who's the in-game leader of Heroic, obviously. So let's start here, right? I actually want to just straight up. Normally I don't go straight to the personal stuff, but I actually just want to quickly know something, AcilioN, before we get into the rest of the episode. So generally I do want to talk about some of the top teams, some of the bigger teams people know, but most people only know about that team called Imperial. The period right after you were in the team, actually, right? There was that brief period where they won the DreamHack Summer, and then people only, because that obviously got them on the radar for most people because they won a pretty decent sized tournament. I mean, I would make a joke haha, not many of the other teams there were any good, but then that's already a burden on people in the call. But whatever. We all know it wasn't a tier 1 LAN. We know it wasn't the biggest LAN in the world, do we? And they did win it, so that is legit. So anyway, when they won that LAN, that plus a mixture of this story where Esperanto, who was like the young 17-year-old star player at the time, was getting to like play God with the roster, and people were in and out of the roster. Like Crystal was in, and then he was out again, and someone else came in, and then eventually Esperanto himself just even left the team. Like, what briefly was your involvement with that team? Like, you were in the team for how long overall?
I think it was a period of 6 months total.
Okay.
We started off just before that team, I played with Dignitas. And after that, I was like, I wanted to start something from scratch. And I just basically took all the best FPL players and I tried to make a team out of that.
Okay.
And to be honest, it was really hard, like finding an organization and someone to like sponsor us and all that. So it took a while. We attended as many things as we could. I think we played maybe 4 different online tournaments each week, and I mean we just tried to basically play as much as we could. And then our first big tournament, tournament you could say, it was Copenhagen Games, and though you didn't mention it, we actually won it.
Okay.
And that was before the DreamHack Open they won.
Fair enough.
And yeah, after that event, we played in a bunch of close qualifiers for different events like DreamHack Tours and events like that. And I think actually like the breaking point for us was when we lost. I think it was 3rd map against AGO. Like we were up 14-4 or something on the last map to qualify for DreamHack Tours, and yeah, we ended up throwing that map 16-14, and then after that, I think everything was just downhill. Everyone was like having attitude problems with each other, and ultimately we just decided that it was better that I think they wanted to play in a different way, and I mean I've always liked to call in like the Danish way, like the Danish style. And I think in the end that they didn't really liked following that.
Okay, because I thought a topic we could talk about with this is, obviously, ever since, I mean, you can go way back to the old FaZe Clan where it was like G2 and those people like Dennis and Scream and Makalele, and then later on Jacob, and obviously Rain was there the whole time. Coming out of that team, we've obviously got a lot of teams now in Europe that are trying like mixed nationality rosters, some of them more extreme than others, you know, like actually obviously FaZe and Mouse are pretty ridiculous how many different nationalities they combine. You know, sometimes it's just like obviously Heroic now has basically been mainly Scandinavian players together, so it's not quite as crazy a bunch. What do you think on this general topic for both of you? Because like it was one move where I actually originally thought these moves would like not really work, because if you notice, Counter-Strike was one of the only games where we never really tried to mix the nationalities as much. Like in Dota, for example, I know they were doing that from a long time ago. In League of Legends, it was pretty much always the case. But I always just assumed in those games, like, oh, well, you know, it's not the same type of communication, or maybe you can just play your role and everyone kind of has a basic idea of what they do. But I always thought, come on, like surely team play will win out in Counter-Strike, and it'll just be too important to have someone who knows like your language, like all like crucially, I think parts that people miss is like things like even just knowing all the call-outs for every map that people in each scene use, you know, like a fucking Swedish people calling the outside area or Nuke yard, even though by no definition would it be a yard. It's a massive outside area of stone that just connects a floor to another floor. Like, I don't know what yards are like in Sweden. It makes me really wonder about ancient Swedish architecture. So anyway, you see where I'm going here. If even yard can confuse me 10 years later, we need to figure out, what do you think of these mixed nationality rosters? Like, is it worth it if the player is super sick? Because on your case, AcilioN, maybe you could start us off. Like, the main reason, in theory, people wanted this Imperial team to be good is this 17-year-old kid from Lithuania. Like, if he's really so insanely good, maybe it's worth trying to play with him over, I don't know, a not as good player that no one knows from Denmark. What's your take on the topic?
I mean, I think you can make it work. I think mainly the biggest issue is like I think the culture, because like for example, we had this discussion in Imperial, since we had 2 players from Lithuania. We actually, in the start of Imperial, we had 3 players from Lithuania, and our problem was like that. Like you see things in a different way. Like, for example, all the Lithuanian people, they told me, for example, that they are not used to like saying sorry. Like they don't do that in their country. They basically told me this, and so so like we had many discussions where like they would
That's
just
amazing.
like,
Okay, yeah.
and that was one of the things they told me, like we don't really say sorry in our country, and like I have to adapt to that, and I'm like okay. So I mean, I think the culture is a big thing, and then also the fact that people like, especially in our team, we were not that like old. All of us were really young. On a team like FaZe, for example, and even Mouse, I think some of the players are like a bit older and probably a bit more mature, and are easily like acceptable of other cultures. Whereas I played with people who are like 17, 19, 20, and so on. So I think if you have to make it work in the future, I think there needs to be like either the infrastructure in the organization, like having people helping you and like managing you day to day, like having a good coach and like
Did you find any like obstacles in when you form a team with like players from FPL, like some of the top FPL players, and having to kind of like teach them how to play the game properly, as if they weren't just in like a pug system, as if they're like actually playing structured Counter-Strike?
To be honest, in the start, I thought it was really easy because they had so much respect for me. Like, so they basically, if like whatever I told them, they would just do. But as time went on, and like they could see that they became better, and like all the small things with communication and like how you should play in normal situations, like they become comfortable with that thing. They want to play like kind of their own style. And that was where, like for us, the problem came, since I'm used to having everything kind of structured. Of course, also some freedom, but not as much freedom as they wanted. So we kind of had to find a balance between that. And for me, that was really hard in the start. Like I really had to like look at my own like way of calling before I could like see, okay, yeah, they might be right, and okay, let's just go contact B, for example.
Especially if they don't ever say sorry when they fuck up.
That's
exactly.
Snappi.
So many jokes that could work with that. Like, turns out fucking Draken was from Lithuania all along. That was the real problem. Moses, trying to pretend to be Swedish.
Yeah, we all wish that we were Lithuanian. I was gonna say, Snappi, you come at it from the other angle because you don't have that FPL based team. You have Cajun, you have Config, you have guys who are massively experienced. Like, is there like some struggles even coming from that angle where you're taking all these guys who've been playing for years at the top for years and have to teach them something new or how you want to play the game?
It's not really that. The biggest difference is that I played for almost 2 years in Heroic, and then we got together with 3 guys from North and OpTic for a brief while. And the thing is, while we do think we play the same style, we actually don't, because one of the biggest struggles was actually stuff like names, because teams, when you're together for a long time, you start to call things certain spots different names. Yeah. And on Overpass, we had the 4 same names, but in different positions. So it was a big mindfuck for because whenever we went A, the call out was always wrong, because me and Yuki would call it one thing, and Cajun and Config would call it another thing. So even in like teams that are from the same nationality, where you think it's the same, it's actually not the same after a while. I guess obviously there are some spots on maps that everyone calls the same way, but as you get further into the team and you build more team play, you give a lot of names to certain spots in order to do more precise callouts, and those spots are really individual for the team. So I don't think that it makes such a big difference whether you're from Bosnia or America or Denmark. I think it's really about finding each other and finding the names and playing enough time together that everyone understands that this is the name we have for this spot and this is the name we have for this spot. Because even now, it still confuses me when we call some stuff out, because it's the same name, but it's another place than where that then. Right. Like I've been calling a spot something for 2 years, and now suddenly that spot is right next to it.
Yeah.
Okay. What about this, though? Because obviously, technically in Heroic, there was Modi all along. So technically it was mixed roster, but it doesn't really count in the same way,
No, it doesn't, because he spoke Danish.
Exactly, and he's been playing, obviously, the Danes for a long time now. But I know for everyone who's in a team that's not basically the absolute top of the world, usually you are having to think, right, what if this player leaves, or there's a rumour this player leaves, and then if he leaves, who would we get instead? Have there actually been any times within either Heroic or OpTic when you actually considered taking in a non-Danish player when you were there, Snappi? These real discussions you ever had to have?
No, yeah, obviously we discussed having non-Danish players, but then they were Scandinavian players. We didn't discuss anyone outside of Scandinavia.
Right.
I imagine the whole experiment with OpTic before you hopped in kind of soured the rest of the guys to having North American players in their roster.
I don't know. They got to speak up for them. I actually think they already spoke on this matter, so I'm not. Yeah,
it's been plenty public, hasn't it?
Yeah.
That was a situation. Like when you guys, because you guys have always had, I know especially with you, Snappi, having I guess quote unquote the third best team in Denmark behind North and Astralis for a while. What's it like to get? Or I mean, I don't know, AcilioN, you could probably speak to this as well. What's it like to get just a player poached? Like, what's it like when you're like in a team and you have 5 players and you're getting better and then all of a sudden the rumors start swirling? I think originally for you, Snappi, it was around Yugi, I would imagine, was kind of the big player who's like, why hasn't North looked at taking him, or why hasn't this team looked at taking him? What's it like making all this progress and then having a player taken from you? Does it feel like you go down to 0, or do you just kind of take a step back?
I actually only think I tried it once, and that was with Glaive.
Yeah.
So obviously,
how was he at the time? How was Glaive at the time that you played with him? Because he's obviously become something magnificent now. Could you see that even back then?
Yeah, he was amazing. I think me and him basically started our way back into the scene because I had been absent due to university, and Glaive had some. Yeah, he was absent as well. So we started our climb together, and then when playing with him, yeah, you definitely saw he was something special. Not aim-wise, but he really understood the game, and he was a great team player inside and outside the game, and I have massive respect for him. So he was a really, really good team player, and he would fulfill his role no matter what he had to do. So yeah, he was amazing.
Think about this, Snappi. This is actually pretty sick when I think about it, because I love like hypotheticals. What if history just took one little, we're talking about where it just needs one tiny thing to go differently, Like, I'll give you the equivalent. Like, say someone who was about to be like shot in some presidential assassination. Say he just noticed something on the floor shiny, and he was like, "Oh, what's that?" If he leaned down, maybe the bullet goes over him, and they're like, "Get down, Mr. President," and then he gets saved, and all of a sudden that guy's still alive later. So the version of that would work for you, right, is basically if Carrigan could have just kept his shit together for a bit longer in Astralis, Glaive would have still been in your team, where he was just a player and a secondary caller. A guy that now everyone's just sucking his dick, like, "Oh, you're the greatest in-game leader of all time. No one's ever been like you're the greatest of all." Right? He would have just been your like right-hand man. He'd have just been feeding you sick calls every now and then. You'd have been the one benefiting, because we'd all be like, "What? I heard Snappy's the in-game leader of that team." Everyone would be like, "He's a fucking genius, the Snappi guy." Also, he did bring that Glaive guy back. Whatever happened to him, he wasn't even that good. Or would have just kept rising throughout the scene. So basically, if Carrigan could have just kept his shit together, imagine where we could have been right now. It would be amazing, right?
True.
Not bad. Not bad.
Duncan, you should do a video on how Kerrigan has been the root cause of every problem in Counter-Strike. Yeah.
What's great there is, like, I didn't make it either of their faults. I just made it someone who is totally unrelated. And also, I'm pretty sure he's not that happy about the fact he got kicked out either. I mean, here's the thing. In a way, that's also just shows you, though, something about being an in-game leader. It's like, it just depends when you catch the person, because obviously almost no one gets to stay in the same team forever. So when you catch them when it's going well, obviously they're glad all those moves happened. When you catch someone they get kicked out of the team, it's not as good anymore. Because, like, I'm sure Carrigan, when he first joined FaZe and they were going fucking ham 2017, probably thought it was amazing. Like, who cares about Astralis? But could have done with some of those majors, if I'm being honest. I reckon he looks back now, maybe he would have liked a couple of those. He almost had one almost. There was that one where he was like 15-11 up on Inferno, I believe it was. I don't remember what happened after that. I think that major was cancelled or something. Like, it was like Wimbledon, we just agreed not to play out the game. It's all right, never mind. That one doesn't count. Just only if Team Liquid wins.
Delete it for the memory. AcilioN, what's it like? What were your first impressions when Freiberg joined the team and you started playing with him for the first time? Like, legendary Swedish player, CS:GO player. What's it like actually being in a team with him, trying to improve?
It's really nice. I mean, he has a lot of opinions, and I think that is really good for me, especially. Like, he always says what he thinks about how we should play, and basically everything. So it has been
he
really
was the in-game leader when he joined, right? First, if I remember correctly, he was joined to be an in-game leader. Or am I wrong?
No, that was Isotreetech.
Okay. Yep. I'm wrong. Well, there goes that idea. I had a thread for a conversation.
Don't worry about that. It's all right. It's all right.
Yeah, move along.
We'll get it back. What about this then? There's a bunch of teams out there in the scene. One of the things I found really interesting is I've got like a video on this topic planned. But what I love about the CSGO scene compared to other ones is, like, first of all, because we do have such a massive scene and there's nearly always like 1 or 2 online qualifier spots, you can have actually like teams that no one's heard of qualify for a legit LAN, and then sometimes if things go perfectly, have a nice run there. So you can think earlier in the year, like ENCE obviously doing a great run at ESL Cologne. Even someone like Big eventually had to come up through that system. There's a lot of teams people will know now, but also because we get to see them play like a LAN in 3 weeks or 2 weeks from now, you can't just ride like the glory of like, oh, I had one result, where I was top 4, and like you can't live off that for 3 months. You'll get found out next week if you're not actually as good. So there's a lot of teams I've noticed have had like some occasional big results. And I want to get some of you guys' thoughts on, because they've been at tournaments that you've been at. So what about that team, Snappi? What about ENCE? Can you tell us what you think of this team, or whereabouts they're at for you?
I think they got a really good structure, which is kind of odd because they have a really young and new in-game leader, but they actually play really well fundamental CS. We played them a lot, and I actually think that they are quite. They look like a Danish team actually in the way they play. Obviously, they aren't, but they look like I couldn't be able to tell that they weren't Danish. If someone had told me, I would believe it definitely. So it seems like they have the roles figured, and they actually have some really great players individually. I think they have a really well-rounded team and 5 solid players. So, and I guess all of them are young except for Elo. Yes. I know that this Ariel guy is probably like 25, but in my mind, it doesn't really matter because he's young in the sense that he hasn't tried to be on top CS. And for me, that really matters because I don't care if the guy is 16 or 26. If he haven't been there before, it's new. And I think that age is overrated.
Yes. Oh, I'm with you on that one. Like, for me, it's not just like the number of the age, it's also how much burnout you've got. Like, if you've played for like 10 years, it's
I think that matters much more.
Like, if a guy came along and he just got amazing when he's 25, I'm sure he could probably do a few years.
Yeah, he could have started playing when he was like 22, who knows? So I don't think that age matters that much, which other people would probably disagree with.
Yes. Also, since you are... How old are you now? Like, you must be 30.
I'm 28.
Like 28? You also do still look like you're 15. So to be fair, I can see why, as a vampire, you would say age has no right. Like, you still have the same cheeks I bet you did when you had a fucking football jersey on with your mom or something. Like,
that's true.
That's true. Exactly the same. That's a secret. You've got to be able to connect with the youth. What do you think of ENCE? AcilioN, you have any thoughts on them? If you don't care, you can say it's okay.
To be honest, we haven't played them at all, so I don't know that too much about them. But what I've seen from them and in practice as well, I think like they're a solid team. As Snappi also said, they play as a team. They don't play like 5 individual players on the team. They play together and they have some good tactics and all that, so I think they're a decent team.
I've got a question for you then. So since we brought that vague topic up as like a background aspect, did you have something to say, Moses?
No, go on.
Oh, okay. What I wanted to ask was this angle, which is like if you actually look, more so than almost any other scene I can actually think of, the Danish scene has had a very, very long and like historic connection to playing. You can just say tactical generally. It doesn't have to be like as strict in one team as another, obviously, but people like the idea of like there is an in-game leader and here's a plan, and even within certain teams, similar roles might exist, And even in fact, I think if you look in CSGO, there's even been like shared map pool generally over the years, It's never like everyone was too crazy out there. Like, if you look at the moment, now that Astralis is amazing, everyone's going to say, oh, yeah, that's fine, everyone should play tactical and have a great coach and this great infrastructure. But up until last year even, we had all these amazing teams who were the best in the world, like FaZe Clan, like SK Gaming, who didn't seem to do with that style at all. In fact, if you go before that with the Fnatic lineups, a lot of people thought in CSGO it's more about abusing all the edges in the game. So, for example, if you have like CZs and Deagles, let's just play low econ all the time and force spy. If we have some really sick aimer, why bother, you know, saving properly or trying to manage the economy with saves? Just go for it with, again, like half buys, go with AKs, whatever. This will work. And, you know, I can't lie, it has worked a lot. There've been a lot of fucking amazing teams who do that. So, what do you think of the difference between the two? Like, do you think that there is like an inherent... Like, is it how should someone decide if their team should be tactical or if it should go this other route that a lot of teams have found success in? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think that also the reason why like Astralis have become so good is, as you say, like the good infrastructure. Because I think if you play like the way all us Danes want to play, like structured, like we want to like abuse using tactics and all this, I think it's really important to have like. I don't know, someone else than the in-game leader who's like good at helping with like figuring out like everything, like anti-stratting and like basically just helping with the tactical aspect of the game. Since I don't think we really have had that, like maybe a short period with North as well with when they had Roger, but
sure.
I think like it's a really big deal when you play as Astralis do and as all of us other Danes do, that you have a great coach and someone else who can look at the tactical aspect of the game.
Sure. In that sense, I guess Rugger's the reverse Glaive in this angle, because now he's getting blamed for telling Snappi everything in the game, and if it goes badly, then it's partly your fault as well, Rugger. Like, I don't know how, because we don't know what you're saying, but again, that's the way teams work, bro. Like, everyone's the blame just spreads out from the center point. What do you think, Snappi, on this topic?
I don't know, really. I guess going back to the topic with how you should play, I always think it's better to follow a plan, to be honest, and I think... like the thing with force buy and buying an AK and stuff like that, I still think Danes do that. But the thing we like to have a plan. I'm not sure that. I guess other countries or other teams have that as well. But I think in Denmark it's a big deal that when you start out a round, there is an idea with the round, and you like if the in-game leader isn't saying something, then someone else is like. I think. Overall, it's always better to have a plan, and I think most teams actually do. It's just like, yeah, I guess it comes down to the in-game leader. Like there are a lot of teams that I guess there are also other teams that play similar to Australia that aren't from Denmark, right? So I think it really comes down to the in-game leader or two or three players besides the in-game leader, because people sometimes think that it's only the in-game leader doing calls, and yes, mainly from spawn, it is mostly the in-game leader. But when the round like takes part, someone else chips in, and like it isn't only the in-game leader sitting and calling what someone should do.
How often do you guys as in-game leaders feel like you have an impact on the game? Because obviously I think in-game leaders, even despite what you're saying with a lot of people making mid-round calls, in-game leaders still tend to have a little bit of a lower stats and score, just because maybe they're thinking of an entire game plan across an entire half, or for whatever reason it might be. How often do you leave a game that you've won or lost, and you said, you know what, as an in-game leader, I made 3 really good decisions that won us rounds? Is that enough to say that you had a good impact on the game? Is it like 3 rounds? Is it 5 rounds?
I think it's like it really comes down to a lot of things. Like there's as an in-game leader, there's your individual performance, obviously, and yeah, it probably is lower, but it's, in my opinion, it's not lower because of the reason that people think. I'll get back to that later, but then the reason, like when you play a game, sometimes you're going to sit there and think that you basically lost the game because you ran into a stack and did a bad call and called a bad rotation. And then afterwards, you actually watch the demo, and it turns out that it was quite the opposite. It wasn't your fault. Your teammate fucked up here or something like that. And then other times you won a game and you were like, oh, I called a perfect game. You sit down and you watch the VOD and you find out, okay, we won this round because this guy just shot 2 guys in the head, and we shouldn't have won it, but we did anyway. So I guess like a year or 2 ago, I was really after a game that we lost, I was really depressed when I felt like I did a lot of bad calls. I still am now, but I always go back and watch the VOD before I really put down the verdict on how I did in the game, because it turns out that it isn't always how you feel when the game is going on. Like, a lot of the time you can actually see a lot of mistakes that a teammate did or you did when you get back to the hotel and watch the VOD. The reason for having lower stats is usually because of the CT positioning. I think that in-game leaders usually are a little less selfish and therefore takes the shitty roles. And you aren't going to get a lot of frags and beam Mirage on ramp and nuke and stuff like that, no matter what you do. Yeah, of course you can be like a Sipnix type of guy who still get it done. But in general, you put it is a lower action pack spot than playing Connector or playing Yard on Nuke, and therefore you get less duels, you get less ADR, you get less entry openings, you get less HLTV rating, which is what people will be looking at afterwards. And I think that's actually the main reason that in-game leaders are lower. And I actually think that Glaive is a perfect example of it, because he plays better roles in a lot of CT spots, and I think that Sonic probably found out that his communication was key in a lot of places in order to elevate them. I don't know if that's the case, but that's my idea.
You put him in Connector on Nuke, and he's a fucking monster. So I mean,
and he plays Connector on Mirage, stuff like that. I mean, that's usually for the star player, but in Astralis there are just like 5 star players, you could say. Like, everyone is obviously Device might be a little above the rest in terms of rating, but overall they're pretty equal, right? I actually think that the reason I said about the positioning on CT is a bigger reason that in-game leaders fall off on the rating. Okay. Obviously, we are in general maybe a little less skilled than other players, but I think that you can make a good player have a good rating if you put him in the correct positions, and a bad player have a good rating if you put him in good position, and vice versa.
Well, one of the reasons why, like, obviously the FaZe clan is a great example of the extreme of if you have all these amazing players and you don't have to play, in theory, like super structured rounds and, like, you know, we prepared this one specific thing, especially because I know at times, like, for example, when they had the stand-ins earlier this year, they've even said in interviews, I believe, because I know they said privately that, like, sometimes they didn't even get to practice. They would just go to the LAN, they would play the LAN, and they would just kind of free-for-all a little bit, you know, and have whatever tactic they used to have 3 months ago, they would run that again. Right? Do you think actually that, like, is that the? Put it this way: if you had superstar players, would you go more towards that kind of a style? Do you think that a team like FaZe, because actually it's one of the weird topics whenever you talk about FaZe, because we have to talk about them all as though they're like failures because they haven't won the major, they've come second place in a lot of tournaments, and it's mad because actually that core has won something ridiculous, like 5 tournaments together. But when you do have those like insane names stacked together, unfortunately people do expect you to win everything. Like, you kind of are supposed to if you're going to gamble and get that team. So, like, could they have been a better team if they'd have gone somehow towards more structure, or maybe had like one less star player and one player who does more the dirty roles, as it were? What's your take on that whole topic? 'Cause is it the good thing about the FaZe clan one is it's more, we're all just hypotheticals on that one. So where would you come down that one, AcilioN? What do you think?
Sorry, can you send me the question again?
What do you think of like a team like FaZe clan? If you had players like that, would you want to play more of a loose style like they do? Do you think they actually would have been a more successful team if they'd have put some more structure in? What do you think on when you, because obviously that's kind of the extreme of having all the big names, you know?
I mean, it's hard to say when I haven't played with the players, because I like a good example in my team right now, at least, is that Freiburg actually used to play like all map control in his old teams, and in our team we have EasyTreeTech, who is really good at doing that. And I think like switching those two, like, so EasyTreeTech is map control and Freiburg is like in the sides. For example, Freiburg, he is really good at like giving ideas in the mid round and stuff like that, and that's easier to do when you're on the outside of the map.
Right.
So I think basically it is to have, like, you have to figure out how your teammates are playing and who is helping with the mid-round calls, who can be on the sides and make those decisions. And I don't know how it is in FaZe. Like, we can only look at the stats. We don't know how they communicate. We don't know how they play. So for me, it's something they have to figure out, like, in the team. So yeah.
Well, let's do this. Let's say hypothetically, let's say Kerrigan gets kicked tomorrow. They bring you as an in-game leader. What's the first thing you change in phase? Do you try and institute a little bit more structure, like more strategy, or?
I mean, I can. I know it's not the same team, but I can kind of compare like phase to Imperial, since it was the same like kind of way my like players wants to play. Like they want to play loose, and in some way I also think like Kerrigan has quite a hard job, since I would guess so that all the players on phase, they have like strong personalities and they know what they want to do. So if Kerrigan wants to play in some way and then Nico says he wants to play in another way, I think it's gonna be a discussion that stops pretty quickly, since I think Nico gets what he wants, and I don't know if I could deal with that, to be honest.
Yeah, sure.
I would want my team to play the way I want. Of course, I can still like I can still take inputs and I can still hear what the players have to say. But ultimately, I think like if a team needs to work under a leadership, the leader also have to like it needs to be mainly his idea. Of course, like sometimes you can listen to okay, this player wants to play this position instead of this, but then you're trying to like tweak it a bit. And but yeah, I mean. It's a tough job. Let's just leave it at that.
I just imagine Kerrigan saying, "All right, guys, everyone line up to throw your smokes out onto the bomb site, and we'll do this execute, and we'll attack." And then someone is just like, "Nah, fuck that. I'm just gonna go headshot. I'm just going out mid." It's just like, well, all right.
Yeah, but like it could basically be like that, and that's the tough part of being an in-game leader on a team like that.
How frequently do you guys call something and then have like your quote unquote star player just say, "Nah, I want to do this"? Does that happen frequently?
No, I don't think. This is the thing. I think like players mainly are like bad at saying no in the round. Like I think people are really good at like looking in hindsight and saying, "Oh, that was shit." I think I haven't really had like any players like saying no unless it was like something I called out of spawn, for example. Then people could say like, no, let's do this instead. But I've never really like, I think people are really bad at like in the moment saying, no, let's do this instead.
Or like they have a piece of information that you don't have and they try and change what you call them.
I think it rarely happens, but usually when it happens, I think people like always have good information. But I also think that's why people don't do it enough. It's because they are afraid of being like not correct. So yeah.
Okay. Right, same scenario for Snappi though, right? He wakes up tomorrow, you're announced as the new in-game leader of FaZe. Obviously, it's, you know, a lot of pressure. It's kind of like when David Moyes joined Manchester United, you know, everyone's wondering, will he fail? Is the job too big for him? Right, let's say you come in, okay, how would you try to make a team like that successful as possible? Like, do you think the current approach is a good one? Is there another way to go with it? It's impossible to say, really, because every time when you look at a player and you see them play and you hear about them, you get an idea of how they are as players and how they will act when they play and how they communicate. And then when you get in a team and you actually play with them, you get a lot of the times everything is just wrong and they play in a different way and they aren't like as aggressive as you thought, or their communication is worse or better than you thought. So I don't know how they are as players, and I don't know what style they want. I don't know how it would basically, I guess you can't really come from the outside and say you can say that you're going to do this and this, but I don't think that you would probably need to change like more than half of it when you actually got into the team. Don't worry, mate. Just chill out for a second. I'm okay. I've got them on this one, okay? Because here's the thing: what they've already done is show us that they are like probably too Danish as people, because we're sort of like, hey, fun hypothetical. Imagine this happens, and then they're like, but what time would it be, man? Would it be like 12:12 that I get there? And then they're telling me like, I don't want to practice right now. It's like, I don't even know you, man. I only know you from other teams, and let's get to know each other with an interview before I give you a spot. It's like, Not bad. I'm still working on it, Moses. It's still in the. That wasn't me trying to speak Swedish there. It'll get one day. I'll sound fluent. No, here's the thing. I don't mind that, Moses. If anything, they've just shown us what they actually would do if they came in FaZe Clan, which is like the good middle managers they are. They would come in. They would organise a team
the first
synergy building exercise. You know, they'd like have interviews and coffees with people. They'd be trying to ask them, "So Nico, how do you see the game, man? Like, you want to be a?" And then a lot of that, you know, before they eventually get to implementing anything in the game.
Everyone sit in a circle, tell us your real name and your favorite way to play Counter-Strike.
That's the Danish way, the Scandinavian way.
It is. Well, listen, something to it. So here's a question, Snappi, because I thought it's like a weird angle we could go with this one. Is AcilioN actually has your old team, a whole bunch of the players. So since you were in a tournament, both of you at CS Summit at the same exact time, have you actually noticed anything about Heroic that's different since you aren't there anymore, Snappi? I mean, obviously they took a player as well. Like you did take, to be fair, one of the best players. But what do you think of the Heroic without Snappi?
I think they're doing good, to be honest. I guess the biggest difference is the change that Aztec made. He actually made that transition even before, because Yugi wasn't playing and Aztec was playing for 1.5 months. And at that time, he got into playing map control and using the orb a little bit more and stuff like that. And he was certainly way better in that way, and that's definitely a mistake that I made. And then again, it isn't, because a guy like Nico is also a really good player in map control. So it's sometimes hard when two players are best in the same role. So you have to make a sacrifice, and at the time, I guess Aztec was sacrificed because he had to play in a lurk role. But I see that now that he isn't, and I also saw that the last month or two I was there, that's definitely a much better role for him, and he's playing much better, and he's definitely being one of their star players in the team. Okay. But apart from that, I would say that they still play to a certain degree. No, but they obviously kept some. Just because you change a player or two, you don't change everything. They obviously probably got 50% of the old stuff and 50% of the new. I guess AcilioN can answer that better than me, but that would be my guess. That's how it usually works in teams.
What do you think, AcilioN? What did you have to change?
I mean, I don't know. I think the lineup is quite different from like what it was before. As Snappi also said, like Nico, like you usually played map control, and basically I think that EC3 is like maybe it's kind of harsh, but I think his only like good position on T side is taking map control. And also, I think like him playing the orb for like, I think it was like 1.5 months, as Snappi also said, like kind of made him like play in a new way on the CT side, for example. He's like double orbing a lot this time. So yeah. Yeah.
Okay. I've noticed though that in OpTic and in Heroic, like you're two of the few teams that actually pick Nuke, of the teams that aren't considered like the big squads. I mean, at the top, obviously everyone's scared of Astralis, so no one wants that to be their home map. Like, what do you actually think of this map? Because again, if you notice, the teams actually historically who've really glued onto this map, except for odd examples like Nip and Virtus.pro bizarrely did at certain points in time, a lot of the Danish teams have put in the hours on this map and seem to actually like it. So what do you like about this map? Because it seems like it's still not a very popular map in the scene. Like a lot of teams, it's a permaban or they stay away from it, generally don't want to play it. What do you think on it? Is it actually a good map? Do you pick it just because it's a punish? What?
For me, it's like I've always liked maps who was like hard to play on the T side. I remember back in the days where I think it was both Cobblestone and Overpass, when they were not like revamped, they were really CT-sided.
Yes.
And I just remember that like we used to put a lot of work in on the T sides, and we were actually like one of the few teams who could get a lot of T rounds on like those really CT-sided maps, and therefore also like that is where also my love for Nuke lies. Like it's hard to play the T side, and I think that makes the map really interesting.
What do you think, Snappi?
I think it's one of the better map, if not the best map in the pool. To be honest,
come on, man. The best map in the pool. Why? Come on,
I'll say it. Before the changes, it obviously weren't. There were a lot of spots that the CTs could be at in yard, which would make it kind of one-sided. You could be at the old entrance to the B bomb side. There was a place you could stand. There were like outer cat. There were a lot of weird places that the CTs could be. But with the recent changes, it's actually a pretty good map to take map control on. And ST, it's basically about abusing rotations all the time. So it's a big mind game, and I think it's one of the most tactical maps that there is in the pool, because you can basically all of your calls is it's really fun to play as an in-game leader, because all of the calls that you're making is basically to make a CT rotate and trying to figure out where the player is, where the Orba is playing, where the rotation player is, and stuff like that. And I think that recently we've seen that it's actually possible to do really good T-halves, and that's one of the reasons why people hated it before, because it was very CT-sided, which I don't think it is anymore. And I actually think the same applies to Cobble. Before, I think Cobble got a lot of hate that was unwarranted because of the stairs. Before the stairs was made, it was a terrible map, because you could just smoke out plateau and you could go out behind the smoke and the CTs couldn't do anything about it, so you had to play 4 guys on B. But after the stairs was implemented, it took like a year for people to actually understand that the map was changed. It wasn't as T-sided. The statistics showed that it was becoming CT-sided. So I think a lot of the hate is unwarranted for now, and I think the same applied to Cobble before. And I think that Nuke is one of the maps that you see a lot of new stuff, and you see a lot of really nice calls, because you can basically abuse rotations that much, and that's why I think it's one of the best maps in the pool.
Okay. Damn, he just dropped the fucking mic on that. Holy shit.
What about this then? Here's a question for you then. So at the moment, Astralis on LAN is something like, I think it's 24-0 on Nuke. I think 24 is the number they're up to. And obviously this lineup never lost. But inevitably, they are going to lose eventually. Like, someone's going to beat them.
We beat them online.
Sure. Yeah, shows
that's a long time ago, though.
Yeah. So, no, here's the thing, though. Whenever people look at stuff like that, I've noticed people themselves get caught up in the narrative, and they start thinking like, oh, who can possibly beat them? And it's like, well, it's actually weird they haven't lost. Like, to be fair, everyone loses randomly every now and then, you know, you just have the 16-14 game, some lesser team. So it might not even have to be like, you know, the second best Nuke team that beats them. But if you had to pick a team, knowing all the teams in the scene, who has a Nuke that could actually beat Astralis? Like, who could be the first one to stop them? Assuming we're trying to actually figure out a team that could do it. Who would you put forward as a candidate, either of you?
I think it's tough, to be honest, because I don't think that there are a lot of teams in the top 10 apart from Astralis that are actually good on Nuke. So I would actually think that it could be a surprise upset from a Danish team.
Here we go. Right, go on. Yeah. What team would that be then? Fucking hell. I know, it's ridiculous. Why do you say that like so cool as well? So,
no, definitely going to be a Danish team. Definitely going to be a Danish team.
It's going to be either us
not
or
mine.
OpTic.
Definitely not mine, but a Danish team.
I see. Yeah. Right. Okay.
I think actually also Mouse could have a good shot. I think they have some good things on Nuke. So yeah,
they have a really good CT side. If they improve their T side, I definitely think that that mouse boards could be a good shot.
Do you think how much do you think they improve bringing why can't I think of his name? Yeah, Sicko back instead of place of Snacks. Did you look at that move and you were like, thank God they brought him back? They look like a much more like that team makes much more sense, or was it just kind of like whatever?
I don't know really. I think they're kind of status quo, to be honest. I think it was like, I think Stigo fits the role, Snacks didn't, but I think they were, I guess, pretty equal still. I guess Stigo obviously must bring something that they miss, and if they have a more positive vibe when they play, then they're probably going to be better. So I guess it's the better move. It must be, since they realized they made a mistake and brought him back. So I'm guessing it's better for them.
Here's a question for you. We've been joking around these past few events, like, you know, laughing because LDLC has all of a sudden had the best results of all the French teams. But I mean, the big highlight for that French scene is G2 bringing Existence back. I think had a lot of us pretty excited. How long do you give Existence as an in-game leader to say, you know, this team?
That was the report, didn't you see it?
Oh yeah, but I mean, is that official? Is that official yet?
It said reports. That put it so that means like it's very likely behind the scenes confirmed. But like supposedly he's already been booted. So
okay, well, I mean, does that make sense? Did you guys? I mean, when you bring an in-game leader, and how often do you generally say, you know, do they get 6 months? Do they get like 8 months? Do they get 3 months before you see some kind of an improvement? Like, how long does it take for an in-game leader, or even just one of you guys, to come into a new lineup and say, you know, it's going to take us a week to get everything figured out, or like a month to get everything situated, and then we're going to start moving on the proper path? Like, what's the timeline?
I don't think there is a timeline, to be honest, because everyone is always pointing at the in-game leader that he is the problem, but there could be 1 or 2 players that basically makes it impossible for the in-game leader to put his plan to work. And I think that when people are putting the blame on a team that is failing, that obviously should be a lot better. The finger is always pointed to the in-game leader. I guess that's just how it is. So I don't know if existence was the issue. I guess they know better than me. But it's hard to say. I guess there's no formula to it.
Did they actually look to you, like G2, look like a team that, like, did they seem like they were structured properly? Do you think they were? I mean, obviously the results weren't too great. So what's your take on it?
To me, I only saw them play a couple of times, and that was on Inferno, where I think you can actually get a lot out of structure, and I didn't think that they looked too structured at that map. So it's only based off that map, and no, they didn't on that particular map. Okay.
You have any insights to G2, AcilioN?
I mean, I have kind of actually the opposite opinion. I think I have also looked at their Inferno, and I think actually maybe it was more recent time, but I think
it was at the major. I saw them.
Yeah, I looked at them because we had a Pro League match against them, so it's probably because it's more recent time. But they looked more like structured. They had some good things, and I don't know if it's a matter of time or it's a matter of trusting existence. I don't know, but yeah, I don't know. Changing all the time, I don't think is gonna be solving the problem, at least.
Moses, right, here's the thing. Even though we didn't come in with any set topics in mind, you know, we're just seeing where it goes. Right, come on, we have to ask this question, right? This is the section of the show where, just for my own personal entertainment, I just want to know what the vibe is within the Danish community. Like, was MSL done dirty by North by just being booted out the team, like 2 events after winning DreamHack Stockholm? You know, what's your take on that one? Snappi, come on, wade in here. What do you think?
You can see it.
They're both things I don't know. So who knows, right?
They're both weighing the benefits of what they want to say.
Thinking,
you can see it inside
now. Yeah.
No, but this is the time where you give a diplomatic answer, right?
Right. Come on. Yeah.
You know, I don't really know, to be honest. I'm not really going to comment too much on that.
Okay. What about more?
You want to wait in there?
Like, for example, I'll tell you one thing that I do think is a bit weird. Okay. Bearing in mind, there's a lot of Danish players have done interviews. You know, it's not like one of those scenes like in the past, like in the old days of the French scene. You know, no one would even speak English to anyone. They would all just stay by themselves. They only did interviews with French websites. Nowadays, you know, people do interviews. People have Twitter. People can talk if they want to. But I will say it's kind of weird. I haven't really seen many ex-players of MSL like take shots at him, or like say they thought he was a bad in-game leader, or he ran the team the wrong way. Like, he's had a little bit of banter with Config, you know, but even then that seemed fairly friendly. You know, it's not like Cajun flamed him when he left or anything. So in the Danish scene, what is like the reputation of MSL, would you say? Like, what do people think of him as players?
To be honest, for me, like, I think like North is probably one of the teams that I like don't really hear too much from. Like, I think I've heard like more stuff from like OpTic or Astralis. So I don't know why, but at least me, I haven't heard that much from OpTic. So I mean, from North. So I can't really say too much. I mean, I actually used to play with MSL back when he was not an in-game leader, and I think he had a like great mind for the game. So yeah.
Was he an opper back then?
Nope.
Well, shit. We're just changing everything up, aren't we?
A lot of people in this call think they can AWP, Moses. Let's not get into that topic. That's a whole separate show, mate. That's a whole separate show right there. Come on, Snappi, you must have something more general you can say. Like, we're not asking you to talk specific shit on North or whatever. Like, what would you say on that angle? Because people outside the Danish scene, you know, we don't know these guys and we only know what we see in interviews and at tournaments.
To be honest, I never really played with MSL, I think, so I don't know too much about him, to be honest. From what I heard, he's a good mid-round caller, and that's basically what I heard from former teammates. He's good at giving the calls out mid-round, which is probably one of the harder things to do as an in-game leader. So I don't really have much to say, to be honest.
All right, let's go here. If you guys don't want to talk, some smack about Danish players and teams, let's go to North America because everyone likes trashing on those motherfuckers. You guys both played against like Complexity, NRG at Summit, and I think which one of you guys is Ghost. One of you played against Ghost, not the other one. I mean, with those three teams kind of coming up in NA, like those kind of second tier teams, we saw Complexity get top 8 at the major, had a good run. We've seen some good stuff out of NRG. Even Ghost has been surprisingly good. Like, what do you guys think of like those tier 2 NA teams that are starting to kind of make a small name for themselves breaking in? And NRG's obviously on like a little bit of a different level, probably, but
I think that NRG that's definitely the team with the highest amount, with the most firepower. They have like 3 incredibly skilled players, and I think that people slept on Breeze a long time. I always thought he was probably their best player. He's insane in my mind. So obviously they are the best team, but the team that I was most impressed by is actually Ghost. I think they play the best CS out of the 3 teams, actually. I know that NRG are better, but I think that the structure and the way that Ghost plays, that really impressed me. We obviously watched demos of all the teams. So yeah, that is the team that from a tactical aspect impressed me the most. But I guess all 3 have done pretty well for themselves.
Yeah, they've all done some cool stuff.
Yeah.
Anything from you, AcilioN, that jumps out with you about those guys? Like, Complexity, that we haven't talked about them yet. They seem to not have all the great pieces, but somehow they've kind of made it work.
Yeah, I mean, I think like all of the 3 teams, they play like good tactical, which I mean, a little like back in the days, I don't think like there was a lot of North American teams that played that tactically. I just remember like this is a long time ago, I think 2014 or something like that, where we played against Liquid, where it was basically just like everyone go to one spot on the map and try to get a pick. And I remember like we played Energy on Nuke at that LAN, and we were actually up like 14 to like, I don't know, 7 or something like that. And we were CT on Nuke, and we lost the match, so they played really well on the T side. Like they had some good things, like they were like making us rotate, like, and doing like really like cool stuff on Nuke. So I'm really impressed by like all the teams, how they like play tactically. And I mean, I think also they are starting to work harder. I just remember like at Summit where I was just sitting and playing FPL, and I heard some of the Ghost guys like talking about that they were gonna go look at some demos to like find some new stuff, and I think like, yeah, that's cool to see at least.
That was also one of the things that impressed me about Ghost, especially because I saw Waddell sitting watching his own demos after the game, and I don't think a lot of players do that. Yeah, it is. Like, it is rare.
Who would have thought that work ethic is a key to success?
When I say that,
but if you look at him, he obviously looked like a really solid AWPer, and the fact that he works individually as well, that must be a key factor, right?
Yeah. Well, here's all you need to know. Like, I won't say the name of the player because I don't want to throw anyone under a bus, but there is a very, very good CSGO pro I once asked, like, at the moment, since you're like in peak form, do you ever watch any games of yourself? Like, do you ever watch back your game if it's a close match and say, did I make any mistakes? And I'm talking about someone where it's not a North American player, like if everyone heard this name, they'd be like, oh, he's one of the best players ever. And he told me like, nah, why would I do that? And then he actually said, for real, I said like, well, check if that you made a mistake, or you did like your decision making, or maybe even just see if like you made a misread, like there was actually someone on the spot you didn't realize. And he actually said, this is the line that would trigger any in-game leader who heard this. He just goes like, nah, because if I made any mistakes, I'm pretty sure I remember and just do it right the next time. And I was like, right, well, See you then, player who has fucking amazing aim. I just hope hope that aim holds up for you in the rest of your career. You know, like you might need it because that answer alone is actually pretty triggering if you've actually seen it how like traditional sports are done and stuff. You know, sadly it's so hard to get players to watch any demos though. I'm amazed he was watching his own demo. Like it's hard enough to get them to watch the team demo who they're just about to play. You know. Like a lot of players, it seems like that's what's weird. I know a lot of people thought as we got more infrastructure, like coaches and actually like boot camps and stuff, people thought it would become more and more professional. And in some ways it has, but I feel like it can also be a crutch. Like if you know that your coach is going to look up all the demos and tell you like basic info, maybe you don't do any of it yourself. You know, what's your take on that sort of topic? Like, should players be more involved? Would you like your players to be more involved if they would in that sense?
Yeah, I mean, for me at least, I think it's so important. Like I think of course, like I have some players on my team who are really good at like watching demos and like really like trying to be involved and not only think about their individual skill. And I think whenever they do that, you can see it in their game. So I think it's like really, really important, and I don't think people do it enough.
Snappi, there's no way everyone in your team watches demos, man. I could believe one or two are good boys. There's a couple of them all. I don't think I've ever seen them on
I don't
demo.
care. I don't care how much they watch of the opposite team that we're gonna face. But I want them to watch demos because a lot of the times when a player is struggling with a spot or something, he says, "I can't play this spot. I'm getting owned all the time." And then I'm asking them, "Did you watch a demo?" And they're like, "No." And that's where I actually think that you can learn the most. That's when there's actually a spot that you can't hold, or you get a new position, you need to watch a demo of a good player. Find a good player and get a few tricks, because yes, you're gonna learn it eventually if you just play enough, but you don't always have 6 months learning a spot in practice and in official games. Sometimes you just need to get some tricks right off the bat, and for that I think demos is perfect. I don't necessarily think that they need to sit like, I'm gonna watch the demos and make the game plan alongside the coach. They don't need to be a part of that, but I would like them to check their position. Let's say they play inner on train, then I would like them to check how do the opposite team actually take inner control. Do they throw a flash, or what do they do? And especially for the Ober, it's also important because there's so many openings in a team that's easy to get in the default. Like if you actually sit down and watch a demo, there's always a weak spot that an Ober can find, and I guess for that position especially, it's important.
Fair enough.
All right. Well, bloody hell! What do you guys think of Kinguin with Taz, with old mate? He's come in. Is he doing a good job with those boys? You guys played him at Summit. They were there, I believe, weren't they?
Yeah. They were there briefly. They went out last place.
So he's doing good, is what you're telling me, yeah?
I mean,
it depends how bad you think they were before.
Go on.
I think we played them a lot. We played them at the Polish tournament, and we also played them at Summit. And I think like they have some good things. Like I think they are trying to evolve their own like play style and how they want to play. They have some like really good things. But yeah, I think mainly they just need more time to like find their play style, basically.
How much time are you giving him? We'll go back. It's not about existence anymore. Now it's about Taz. How much time has he got?
I don't know, man. I mean, I don't think it's a matter as, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. It's always gonna. There's no like set time limit, but like, do you see enough improvements to like think that experiment's on the right track at the very least?
Yeah, I mean, we talked a lot with him at Summit, and he actually sounds like the guy who's the most motivated on the team. So I definitely see him still being around for long.
We can actually transition this, Duncan, if you want. There's been plenty of talk lately about like the online leagues from like the professional players that are like how busy it makes the schedule amongst all the tournament. For tier 2 teams, obviously you don't have like you guys have Pro League and everything. I think OpTic, you guys do
ECS.
Yeah, ECS. But what's the schedule like? What's the circuit for the professional teams? Obviously, is just overloaded for like the tier 2 teams. And I hope you guys aren't offended if I put you in that category. But is it a little bit easier to manage your time? Is it easier of a schedule on you guys to be able to like have enough time to practice, have enough time to feel like you can improve, or are you guys just as bogged down with events and everything?
I think it's actually worse for tier 2 because we still have to play ECA. It's just the lower league in order to qualify for Pro League. And then on top of that, we have to play all of the qualifiers, open qualifiers into close qualifiers, which usually will take 3 or 4 days. And that's full days. That's with that's 2 or 3 best of 3s in one day. So, and on top of that, we also play the tier 2 events because we can't just sit home So I actually think it's worse for the tier 2 teams than the tier 1 teams.
Oh shit! All right.
Yeah, I mean, I can just say like our schedule. Like, we actually leave like in 8 hours for an event in Bangkok, and then we go directly. We are home for 3 days, and we go to DreamHack Winter, and then we are home for I think maybe 9 days, and then we have the minor close qualifier. And on top of that, we just finished a Pro League, and I mean, we basically had to say no to ECS since we didn't think that we had enough time to do it. So, as Snappi says, I think it's even worse for us since we also have to play close qualifiers for everything. I mean, Astralis, they can ultimately just pick and choose. They can just say we want to go there, and then we want to have like 2-week break, and then they can say, oh, we want to go there. I mean, of course they have to play ECS and Pro League, but other than that, I think they like kind of have an easier schedule, if you can say so.
The thing is, just the other day we had to play. What was it? We had to play the ECS matches, and then we had to play a VES qualifier, which obviously weren't on HLTV apart from the final, I think. But that was a total of, I think, 20 matches, something like that, official matches in 2 days. We played like nine maps per day. I guess 18 maps, and that's the equivalent to an entire ECS season. So that pretty much sums up how many games you actually play in that level.
Holy shit.
And and to be honest, I think it's actually even worse for like a lesser team, like maybe tier 3, because like we get invites to we get directly invites to for example DreamHack Open tournaments. We get direct invites to those tournaments, but like tier 3 teams, they have to play like either the open qualifier for the close qualifier for DreamHack Open, or even just like the close qualifier if they are lucky to get the invite to that. So like they basically have to play a Saturday and a Sunday for like open and close qualifiers, and at the same time probably have online leagues, MDL, and what else there's.
Makes sense to me. The guy works in the fucking mailroom. He has to go 14-hour a day. You know, he's just eating a sandwich. He has to ride a little bike home. He's not living the dream life. You know, the guy who's the fucking CEO, he just comes in, does his meetings. He goes, right, cancel that one for 1 p.m. I'll make that my 2 p.m. And then he just goes out and he banging all the hookers and all that. So that's just the way of the world. It's not my fault. It's just the CS version of the world. But there is one upside to that, which is the one upside is because it is like a massively open format. I will say I do hate online Counter-Strikes. This isn't as cool, but like it does allow teams to get in who you've never heard of in theory, and people can every now and then do a run and you find out they're legit players. Obviously, the downside of that is, it's online. Like, listen, I might have flamed you a bit, Snappi, but I think OpTic's better than Epsilon. Like, that's an online match. No, I don't know if that result would be the same on LAN. I suspect not. I suspect old mate Surreal probably wouldn't carry the whole 3 maps and Dumpster, Gauge and B and config, etc. I don't reckon that would probably happen, but that's just unfortunately the nature of playing online, right? I mean, you guys beat Astralis. There we go. It works both ways.
yeah, true. But that's a long time. That's a long time. That's almost a year ago, though.
True. That was the old version. You're right. Yeah.
Yeah, that was heroic. Yeah, but you're probably right. The results are probably more legitimate at LAN, but still, I also think that a lot of the teams online get underrated, and I think that we've seen it lately with the runs that some of the teams coming from the open and close qualifiers have done at the events.
For that?
No, but you see, the point is like, I guess 2 or 3 years ago, you wouldn't see the runs that Big or the runs that ENCE or the runs that LDLC have done. Okay. But now the teams in Tier 2 or Tier 3 scenes are better than 2 or 3 years ago. And I can feel that because back then when we started playing with Heroic, it was, to be honest, way easier to be in that sort of level than it is now. Because with more money and more organizations and a bigger scene, it's getting more professional even at the lower level. And a lot more players are playing full time, so the average level have gone up. Obviously, the top is still like you can't really the top teams are still better, but the level under that is like the teams there are more teams than there used to be, I guess.
Fair enough.
What has been the biggest jump for that for those teams trying to catch up to the top tier? Has it been the skill of individual players? Has it been more dedication to becoming like a strategic team and understanding how to play the game? Like what has been like the biggest reason why they've kind of caught up?
I think it's money, to be honest. A lot more teams again playing. I know that
you sound like a true capitalist. I love it.
No. Well, I guess, but the thing is, with more money, more players get to play full time, and then like it's hard because I can speak from the 1.6 days. My teams that were like, I guess around 10 in the world, something like that. All of us had full-time jobs, full-time studies, but now and I guess it was the same in CS:GO a couple of years ago with all of the teams that was like lesser than top 20 or top 15, top 10 even maybe. But today it's different. Like top 100 is like full-time. So obviously the teams are going to practice harder and the teams are going to get better. So I think that's the biggest reason.
Have either of you online played against that Vitality team, either in scrims or officials or whatever? Because I heard like they were scrimming loads even before they even officially announced that team, right? Like I think it was like a month or two before they'd already kind of gotten the core together. Like, can you tell us anything about this team? Because I heard ironically, before they actually went official, like that there was like mad scrim hype that everyone said they were doing amazingly. What can you tell us about them?
We scrimmed them and played them in an official game. I think that, to be honest, it's always hard from practice results because sometimes we can beat a top team 25-5 or something like that, and then the next game we'll lose 25-5 to a team that is less than us. So you can't really take too much from it. But in practice, they weren't special when we practiced them, from what I remember. But obviously, the Saivu guy is special. There's no doubt about that, because he was insane.
Right. AcilioN?
Yeah, I mean, we got absolutely destroyed by them in practice. Like, I think 2 days in a row or something, we had like 4 maps or something against them. They played really well, but I don't know. It's hard to say out for practice because there was also like kind of a bad period from us. So yeah, it's cool to see them in I was thinking this DreamHack Atlanta, right?
Yeah, they're in the finals looking to win the final right now.
Yeah, so it's cool to see them do well, at least.
Did you see Keo just wreck them? Not that bad, but he did just put out that tweet that was like, we ran that pistol around in 2014. It's not bad. I like that. I like that.
How did he stopped watching demos in like 2015? So that's all his material he's got there. So shout out to all of Keo's in-game leaders since then. I've got you back, homies. It's all right. So there we go. All comes back in the end, Moses.
What did you guys think when Keo was left? Like when Keo's left as a free agent for so long? And I mean, the crazy thing about this, guys, is won 2 majors with the French teams. He was on FaZe. He was instrumental in them winning a couple of those championships early on in that lifetime, or in that lifespan of that team. When you guys see him on as a free agent and just like no one picking him up, are you guys kind of like scratching your head, saying like, we know Keo's insane, we know he's really, really good. Like, why has no one picked him up? Or like, how is that looking at free agents as like a fellow player? Like, people just underestimating how good he actually is?
I mean, there must be something, like, because I think he's really good, and I think many of the French players would say that as well. So there must be something like attitude.
So you look at it like a red flag, where you just say there's
must
something
be like attitude, maybe work ethic, like something like that. There must be something like that. Otherwise, I can't see why he is not like on one of the top teams.
Okay, that's fair. What do you think of the new Cloud9 roster with him in there? What do you think of that whole Keo, Golden, Flusha, that core trio?
Looks pretty. I think it's kind of weird, but like in a way, I think it could work. I think Golden did some good things in Fnatic, and Flusha is of course a really good player. So yeah, I'm looking forward to see how they are gonna play in the future.
Right, within the Danish scene, there's obviously a little bit of hype around the Fragsters team, who was playing at the DreamHack Opens, and this bunch of players where none of them have been in the top teams yet, and we've got a few, like, people know Starvin's quite young, people are thinking of him kind of like they think of Sergey from ENCE, like young talent, maybe one day he's going to be a top player. Refresh, I saw when we were at Starladder, looked pretty good. Like, is this team actually, do they just lack, like, what's holding them back from either players being taken from the team and going to the other top Danish teams, or as a team moving up? What do you think of this squad?
I think they're pretty decent, but they're all pretty young and none of them had experience on the top level. I guess that lately the most promising have been Refresh, but it's also quite obvious as a Dane because you see him put in a lot of hours in DPL, the Danish Pro League, and Faceit Pro League. So again, I think a lot of it really comes down to motivation and how much you want it, and it seems like the Refresh guy, that Refresh really wants it.
I think one of the reasons why, like, they haven't really someone have picked any of the players up is basically because I don't think they're in the circuit with kind of sounds bad, but like going through hunting, because he usually, like, people played with him, and then he would, or like there would be talks about, okay, this guy is pretty good, and then at a certain point someone else would pick him up, either Heroic, North, something like that. So I think that's one of the reasons, like they have kept them quiet for yeah. So and I think it's only like in recent time that they have been starting playing like Danish Pro League. So like we have gotten to know them a little bit better. So I think it's just a matter of time, to be honest.
Wait, how does that actually work then? So because people know Hunden in the scene, like if he has a player for one of his teams, it just makes it like that's how people kind of keep track of who the next player's coming up are. Or is it him specifically telling people, no, I've got this player, he's really good or whatever?
It's hard to say, but I think basically just talk around in the Danish scene, like people saying, like people can actually see like, okay, he's putting up some good stats on HLTV, and then people start asking, oh, is he good? And then you see a game with him playing good, and then I think it's basically just everything, like talks, watching him play yourself. Yeah.
Any thoughts, Snappi, on the Hunden connection?
I think it basically comes down to that his team was usually the fourth best in the scene, so the best talents would usually go there, and then from that point it would be like a full-time professional team, and the most obvious choices would usually be in his teams. But I mean, not everyone went through that way, I guess. But I guess it's natural. Like you would. I don't know which teams you could use as a reference point, but well, I guess actually maybe, I don't know if the French scene has some LDLC team, something like that, where they go through, but he just had the fourth best team in the Danish scene for so long, so it was natural to pick his best talents.
Do you notice a trend of like of teams now getting younger and going down to like new and undiscovered players rather than recycling some old players over and over again?
I think the Danish scene have always done that, but you're not completely okay. But the thing is,
I just like the context of like the two people you're asking this right now. Like, look at their teams, mate. I was like, what is Essetag? That's it. He's like the new player.
Listen, I didn't say they had to notice it within their own team.
Okay, no. But if you actually look at most of the players being taken in, like, I guess there's only like 6 or 7 players in the 4th best Danish teams that have been around for a long time. I guess, like if you see in Astralis, obviously Glaive goes back a long way, but he's kind of new again. And then Magis was new in Velde came up, Kirby came up. Obviously, now we're going further back, but most players come up at a young age and join those teams. But I think that people aren't as afraid of picking up new talents because it's easier to actually see, to actually find them because of HLTV. Because everything they're even like the level that HLTV cover is super low. So you see who stands out on the team from a statistical point straight away, and on that level, usually the best players are. I'm guessing the best. If you have really good stats, you're gonna move up a level at that point, and then later on, communication and all the other stuff gets taken into account. So I guess it's just been a lot easier with FPL and. I guess Rangus in America, and also HLTV and the stats coverage to actually find those young talents. Where before, where it would only be tier 1 or tier 2 matches, at least back in 1.6 that was covered, then you wouldn't find those talent as easy. Like it would be way harder to find them.
Okay. Should we extend on that? You got one final topic in you? Has anyone?
What you gonna do in Bangkok?
We're playing something called Toyota Masters. It's I think it's Kinguin, AGO.
You gonna go out?
I mean, we're gonna meet our new owners, so that's gonna be pretty interesting.
Nice. That's all I had, Duncan. You got anything?
I mean, just make some sort of joke like, oh, right, so this is what the great aunt of the refresh owner looks like. Oh, hello. Yeah, so have you ever owned a team before? Have you? All right, just in name. Right, fair enough. Well, see you then. Thanks for the scarf. We'll send on that note. All just harmless banter. This video was kindly supported by Andreas, Snazore, Westerlund, Dean Tanglis, Gardner Wilson, Landon Thompson, Tobias Bernasconi, OllieJ, NateDOhDoubleG, Kyla Harris, Travis Greb, Daniel Yordanov, James Harding, VeXii, Robert Baxter, Lucas Kerza Szczesny, and a special thanks, as always, goes out to my man, Jerky's Minion. Do you want to suggest a topic or a guest to feature in my upcoming content? Perhaps you want to ask me a question in my monthly AMA. Do you want teasers from my upcoming content? See who the next guests are going to be. Perhaps you'd like to take part in a discussion about esports with me. Well, any and all of the above exclusives are available for my patrons, so put your money where your mouth is and join the Scrilluminati today at the Patreon link below.